Okay, somebody left Mercedes keys on the gardener's exchange table. Whose keys are these? Yikes. You looking? Okay, when you realize you can't drive home, your keys are right here. Okay, you want to start?
Okay.
Oh.
Can you hear me? Okay. Well, welcome everybody. It is so nice to see a big group of people here. We hope this continues through the year. We know that last month lots of people were still traveling, but I think people are heading home now before the holidays. So we hope that we'll have good turnouts for the next few months. We don't have much to say for President's remarks other than a couple of sort of housekeeping things. We are passing the Penny Pines jars today, so if you have any loose change or if you have any large bills, if you want to pop those in there, that will go towards the Penny Pines. We're also selling raffle tickets still, if anybody has that. The workshop today, there are 2 spaces that have opened up in the workshop. So if anybody would like to stay for that, just head into the social hall after the meeting, and there are 2 places available for that. Okay, Susan, do you have any other comments before we move on with the agenda?
No, glad to see everybody.
Right. Okay, so the first thing on the agenda after our remarks is the proposed budget for the 2022-23 year, and unfortunately Cindy isn't able to be here today, so I am going to make the announcement and ask for the vote, and Suzanne, our parliamentarian, is going to tell me if I do it wrong. So, okay. So, as stated at the September meeting, the budget has been made available for viewing electronically, and having received no questions or concerns, I would like to put the budget up for a vote. Anybody with any questions now before we do that? In that case, I would ask that all in favor say aye. Any opposed? The budget is passed. Okay, so now we're going to move on for a Wreaths Across America report. No problem. If that's the worst thing you do, it'll be okay.
Move your slides forward. You just push down on the down button. Right. It'll move them.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Karen Novak, and new co-chair for Wreaths Across America. Kate Engler, I really appreciate her help, and I appreciate the support of the Garden Club for this wonderful opportunity to give back to our veterans as well as support our club. I'm going to turn it over to Kate to go through the slides, and for those of you that are new, provide information. And for those of you who haven't participated in the past, perhaps clarify the opportunity for our club. Thank you.
Good morning. We have 2 people who don't like public speaking, so we fought over who had to do the slides. I'm the rookie, so I lost. Anyway, thank you so much for all your prior support. You should have received an e-blast yesterday that told you, that had some links provided that would take you directly to our club page for this wonderful sponsorship program. So you can use your instructions there. Sarah's going to also put the links on our club website, and so you can get anything you need off there. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, Karen and I are both available to help you in any way to get it done. We can, you call us, we can take care of it. Thank you to everybody who gave cash and checks this morning. We'll make sure that you get receipts for those donations. If you have a grave-specific order, for instance, my cousin this morning bought one for my father's grave, those have to be completed online. If you just want to donate for any grave, you can cash check and mail it in, but if you can use our website, then Wreaths Across America has a record for each $15 wreath. $5 of that comes back to the club for our programs, which is wonderful. And Bouquet of Thanks has been a beneficiary, as well as some of the other groups, so it kind of keeps it in the veteran family. Oh, I probably should have done that, huh? Okay, so that's what I just told you. Okay. For each wreath, as I said, $5 comes back to us. All national cemeteries are eligible. If you see on our website, the cemetery that pops up is Miramar, which is one of our local national cemeteries. The other one is Fort Rosecrans, and that you can find on a drop-down menu. And then there are many other graves or many other cemeteries that you can go to. So if you have someone at Arlington, if you have somebody in in another state, there are ways to drill down to that. And what you need is oops, sorry. That's how lovely it looks. And Penelope took this picture at Miramar last year when she was over photographing the jacaranda trees. So it was really nice to have something that's meaningful for us right here. If you know, of course you need to know the name of the person that you want to honor, the branch of the military that they served in, and everything else can be looked up. But the more information you have about their rank, and you need to know, of course, where they're buried. But it's very easy to do, and like I said, Karen's been doing this longer than I have, but we're both here to help you, and we can help you with anything that you might need. So the last, yeah.
When you get to the Village Garden Club and then you see the cemeteries that are listed, those are just the ones that our club has donated to so far. So there's a different military cemetery. Those are easy to find and add to our club. We're also doing some research on some non-military cemeteries where veterans of the club would like to present the wreaths. Greenwood Memorial, for example, is a local cemetery. It's not a military cemetery, but since several military are buried there, that is another one that is eligible.
Also, please, if you want to invite your friends to participate. It's a wonderful program, and like we said, it raises wonderful amounts for our programs. The last day to order is November 21st, so you get it all done before the holidays, and the sooner the better. And then you can check it off your list. And we wanted to thank our members who have supported this program in the past. If we missed anybody, we're sorry, but again, there was cutting and pasting from Excel, so you're in there by your first name rather than your last name, because that's how it showed up on our sheets. So we thank you for that, and please call us with any questions, and we are happy to help you. As Karen said, we had a few people that were interested in volunteering. The day that they lay the wreaths, there are volunteers from around the county. I've seen Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts over there, and I'm sure other service clubs do it as well. But hopefully we can get a handful of people to either go to Miramar or Rosecrans and help with the grave-specific wreath laying. So I think that is all, and we thank you. Yes, you say whatever you like.
With Wreaths Across America, why it is Wreaths Across America? Because wreaths are placed at every single military cemetery here and abroad on the same day. So it really is a nationwide, global effort to honor our military. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to move on now to the holiday luncheon report. And Margaret Dudas has kindly volunteered to run that this year. Margaret, can you stand up so people know who you are? She's wearing her festive jacket just to be in the part, and she asked me to read an announcement. So she says, please join us as we deck our hall with boughs of holly to enjoy a festive lunch catered by Giuseppe. Immediately following our meeting on December 15th, the cost is $50. There will be a sign-up sheet at the November meeting if you want to pay by check, or you can register on our website to pay by credit card. Go to the sign-up genius that can be found on the members-only section of our website to do this. Please call her if you have any questions. And she's also taking reservations at the meeting today as well. Here, it's going to be immediately following the meeting, the holiday meeting, and then it will be in the social hall. And they have big plans for decorations, so I think it's going to be really beautiful. Now we're going to have a holiday pantry report. So if Wendy, if you can come and tell us what you have organized for that. And Wendy is also going to be passing sign-up sheets, so if any of you are willing to bring baked goods or whatever, if you would sign up today, and I'm sure we'll have them at the meeting in November as well.
Hi, everybody. You probably don't know me. I'm one of the COVID members, and hopefully that's all passed now. But anyway, so the Pantry Holiday Gift Sale is our major fundraiser. So it's really important that we all contribute and make it work. So I really appreciate all your help. Basically, we don't want too many sweet things. Savory things seem to sell better. And if you could, we'd like to promote them as hostess gifts. So if you could decorate them pretty, that would be great. And small portions are better. Like jams are wonderful, but in small jars, and nuts are very popular, and spice rubs for meats, for barbecue. So maybe go more on the savory side versus the sweet side. But sweets are always very good too. And the sale will be on in December for our December meeting. And if you could sign up the list, I'll be contacting you. And thank you very much. And I'll see you next meeting in December, of course. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Wendy. And you're right, we have a whole batch of COVID members that we need to make sure everybody knows and has met and are part of the club. We're going to go on now and do our raffles. If we start with our hospitality raffle. Okay. Okay, is Marge Palmer here? Because this is your bag. And your phone. Are these your keys for the car too, or is that somebody else? We may raffle the Mercedes at the end of the event. Okay, so here are our raffle numbers. 384021, 384074, 384039. Those are the first three. I better check in case one of them is mine. Oh, I'm the 074.
Oh, good. Well, here, I'll take over. Sure you are, Roz.
Yeah, right.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Joy. Yes, great. Okay, so Roz was 74. Who's 021 or 039? All right, one more. 384047. Zero 47? You were 74. This is 47. How about 384055? I'm waiting for somebody to yell bingo. Oh, yay, we got somebody. Okay. 384055. Oh, good. Yay! And 384063. Oh, bingo. Okay. I think we're done, right?
This all goes to prove that, like me, most people lose their raffle ticket before they actually get into the sanctuary. Okay, and now, thank you. And now we're going to we're going to call the raffle for the amazing arrangement that Annette made.
And the pumpkin.
And the pumpkin. Whatever they want.
We'll let the person choose. Okay. Julie Fiss.
Julie?
Julie Fiss? Yes. Julie, you don't have to come all the way up here. You just tell us which one you want. Do you want the flowers or the pumpkin? Oh, come up there. There is a reward for doing refreshments. Paula McGrahm. Where is she?
She's there.
Yes, you get the flowers. You can leave them. You can leave them there till after the meeting. Okay, wonderful. So I do want to. Where is Annette? I don't see her now. Oh, that's right, 'cause she's got 3 weddings this week. I just wanted to say thank you to Annette. And then also, who did the pumpkin? It was beautiful. Who did that? Gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. Thank you for donating those for the raffle. Okay. Kim, you're on. Come and introduce our wonderful speaker.
You want me to announce it? We're having a statewide emergency drill in about 2 minutes. Okay. So maybe I won't start for 2 minutes. We'll wait. I'm not sure what's going to happen.
had I known this was going to be a big deal, I would not have signed up for this. It's 10:29. At 10:30, there's going to be a statewide earthquake drill. And coming from Brooklyn, this is my first one, I'm nervous. We're supposed to drop, cover, and hold on. So I looked at all the instructions, and to hold on, you're supposed to take your hand, put it over your head, and put your hand to cover your neck. Okay, don't ask. And then you're supposed to get away from glass, and you're supposed to find a really sturdy wall. I'm going to that one. Join me, or not. I don't know. What's sturdy? Do you guys do this all the time? God.
Okay, I think I'm gonna try going ahead because it's 10:30 and so far nothing's happened. Today, it is my pleasure to introduce Paige Dickey, an acclaimed garden writer, lecturer, and designer. Paige is a director emeritus of the Garden Conservancy, and she co-founded the Open Days program in 1995. Paige has written extensively on gardening and garden design for many years, and she is the author of 8 books, 2 of which are about Duck Hill in North Salem, New York, where she lived and gardened for 34 years. Her latest book, Uprooted, A Gardener Reflects on Beginning Again, is about her move to Falls Village, Connecticut, and subsequent new adventure. We are grateful to Paige for traveling to San Diego and presenting to our club today. Her book, Uprooted, is absolutely wonderful, and I can't wait to hear her presentation. I wish we had copies of Paige's book here, but you can purchase Uprooted and her other books at Warwick's or online. And just for full disclosure, I do work at Warwick's. Everyone, please welcome Paige Dickey.
Thank you, dear Kim. And I have to say, what a treat. There's so many ways it's a treat to be here, but it was a treat all this time communicating with Kim about coming out, and just the generosity and just so wonderful. And then I was picked up and cosseted by Cheryl Lesser, and where is she? There she is. And well, you have to know that yesterday morning I scraped the ice off my car before I got on 2 planes to get here, and I came out of the airport just staggering at your sun and your heat and the dazzlingness of it all. And last night we had dinner outside, al fresco, and oh my God, it was such a wonderful treat. And anyway, so it's been just a joy. Oh no, that's not going to work. There we go. We're going to go right past that. As Kim said, we left Duck Hill in North Salem, New York, actually 7 years ago, and moved north to the foothills of the Berkshires. And despite COVID, despite drought and rabbits, despite the frightening turmoil of our world, it turned out to be a joyous decision, and so I wrote a book about it. And this is a picture of the door that everybody went in and out of at Duck Hill, my old garden. And I'm going to read a couple of paragraphs from the first chapter in my book, which was called Leaving. We walked away from 34 years of making, nurturing, loving a garden. How many thousands of perennials and bulbs did we leave behind? How many flowering shrubs? Hundreds. How many trees that we planted young and watched grow and stretch, becoming flowering umbrellas, casting shade and turning fiery in the fall. We left behind the drifts of flowers that only accumulate in when you're there for so many years. In this case, snowdrops, winter aconites, spring phlox in the woodland, foxgloves, verbascums, Johnny jump-ups, poppies, and larkspur in the gravel gardens, lungworts spreading their haze of blue in the back of the border. This is the main garden at Duck Hill, and at the foot of that privet hedge, I had just sweeps of lungwort, pulmonaria, and in April it was just this haze of blue. I thought that I would always live at Duck Hill, that this would be my last house. It wasn't big, a simple farmhouse, old and quirky, with small book-filled rooms littered with down-cushioned sofas and chairs in faded linens and chintz, frayed or forgiving oriental rugs on the floor. There were enough bedrooms in its rabbit warren to house our children when they came home, and in later days, their wives and husbands and their children. The kitchen, which was the heart of the house, was spacious with a great old Garland stove, shelves of crockery, and a long table and chairs in the middle, and doors going out onto the terrace and garden. And this was the view from the doors. It is so American to turn our backs on a home, to move on. And American, too, that in a matter of months, it is all wiped away, those drifts of flowers, those fragrant shrubs, those young trees. Even the old farmhouse is torn down, obliterated, to make way for the important structure that was the new owner's house. And the minute that structure was finished, she put it on the market. She was just flipping. So everybody says, why did you do it? Why did you leave Duck Hill? And the answer is twofold. Finances, for one. Duck Hill was in Westchester County, just outside of New York City, and the taxes were high. And the other reason, if we were being honest with each other, was that the garden was really getting to be too much for us. It was 3 acres of intensive planting. And my husband, Bosco, had just turned 80, and I was no spring chicken. And it just seemed that unless we hired somebody full-time, which we weren't willing to do for a number of reasons, it was really getting to be too hard to keep up the garden. Well, after we made the decision to move, I really was stricken for a couple of weeks. Oh, more than a couple of weeks. But after a while, I had stirrings of excitement about a new place, a new nest, and I was dreaming of another quirky old farmhouse, and I was dreaming of an orchard, an apple orchard, and a meadow. My husband was dreaming of a Victorian, so I knew the whole project was going to be a compromise. We had decided, most people our age move south, but we decided to move north to this little town to the north, what is called the northwest corner of Connecticut. We had a lot of friends there, and I loved the countryside. It's open and rolling and pastoral, and yet always there are these views of hills. So we looked and looked and looked and looked, and finally we ended up not with an old farmhouse or a Victorian. we ended up with this, which was not at all what we had in mind. It's an 18th century church. It was the first Methodist church in New England. And the reason that we ended up with this peculiar house was this. This was the view from the front door. It was 17 acres of meadows and woods and those hills, those magical hills. So having fallen in love with the land, and a deer. Do you see that deer there? Lots of deer. Anyway, we went back to Duck Hill and thought, okay, we're going to buy this place, but how can we make it work? It had never been made into a house well, and there was no living room to speak of. There was no fireplace. So we were scratching our head. Happily, right around the corner from this house in Falls Village lives Bonnie Williams, the wonderful doyenne of interior design. And she's an old friend, and she hopped in her car and went over and then looked at the place and then called me and said, Paige, I know exactly what you should do. On access with the front door of the house, in the back, put on a living room and a fireplace. And then she told us several other things, all of which we did. Here is what we did right after it was built, and that's the new living room. And we used an architect from Washington, Connecticut, called Peter Talbot, and we knew about Peter because when Bosco and I got married, Bosco's a European, and he had always lived in high-ceilinged homes, and he was really ready to come live in my house, but not so ready for 7-foot high ceilings. And so with the money he had from selling his house, which was closer to the city, we built a house of his own. And it's just one room. It was just one room. Here it is. And in the back was a greenhouse attached to it. And it had a high ceiling. And he spent his days there. He listening to opera and talking to his European girlfriends. And he came down for meals. And at night, of course. Anyway, so we loved that room inside, and so that Peter made us a similar room as the living room of our new house. And it has wonderful windows and wonderful light. And I was told, unlike at Duck Hill, where I had books on the walls everywhere, I was told in this new living room there were to be pictures, no books. But between the old church and the new living room were a couple of alleyways, really, just a couple of, like an enfilade of rooms, and that's where I have my library. So the construction went on for about a year. We were living nearby, and when it was done and we moved in, I took this picture from the front door of the house and I put it on Instagram. And a follower of mine on Instagram commented on this picture, and she said, "Oh, Paige, I just can't wait to see what you're going to do with this." And I was horrified. I went, no, I'm not going to do anything with this. I'm not going to cut it all up into rooms. And anyway, so I don't remember what I said to her, but I gently told her no. And interestingly, what we loved about the new place was it sits high and it's surrounded by fields, and there's this sense of sky and sunlight and space, and we loved that. And it was in complete contrast to what we had at Duck Hill, where I had created a necklace of hedged rooms that confined the house and gave it a closed kind of intimacy. I didn't think that was appropriate for our new place. I thought instead that if any garden I did, I wanted a sense of transparency. I wanted you to be able to see through to the wildland. And so I actually used a lot of native meadow plants when I did a garden. This is something called Veronicastrum, which blooms natively, and I love it as a vertical. So here's a picture of the front of the house and the driveway. We had inherited the remains of a little garden in the front. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a stone wall here. And this garden designer had been hired about 25 years before we moved in. Somebody I admire and have written about, her name's Nancy McCabe. And she had put in that wall, and then she planted 2 serviceberries, or shad trees, which is one of my favorite native eastern understory trees. And then she had planted a garden, and nothing much was left but peonies. And we all know peonies live forever. So I looked at this and I thought, well, do I really want a garden like a garden, a sort of a cottagey garden in front of the house? And then I thought, well, why not? I want a place to grow perennials, and the bones of it are here. So I decided to go ahead, and I planted it with baptisias and amsonias and catmints, and all of which you see here. And I love gravel, so we had graveled the driveway, and then I graveled a path in the middle that goes to the front door of the house. And planted things like, of course, you can't grow any of these things, but anyway, this is a spirea that has chartreuse leaves. It's called Oh God. And actually, you can grow this. This is an aster which is blooming right now. It's called October Skies, and I know you can grow. I've seen in Lonnie's garden the most beautiful aster. And you see that's Veronicastrum there, and this is verbascums or mulleins. And I have this. I love mulleins, and so the front garden now has quite a few mulleins. Here's one. It's called Verbascum shakesii. And in back is a native plant that is new to me called downy skullcap or scutellaria, and it's that divine blue. Oh, I went the wrong way, I'm sorry. One of my goals in that front garden, because it's right by where we eat breakfast in the morning, I wanted to bring the butterflies and the birds to us, to the house. And so I planted things like, this is this is a sunflower called Lemon Queen, and it's full of goldfinches when it's blooming. And next to it, that purple is ironweed, and in August, ironweed is just dancing with giant black swallowtail butterflies. So in the back of the house, having pushed the house out, or the church out, we ended up having to put a retaining wall in because of the drop in elevation. So I had a local man make us a dry wall. And what I didn't know is that I was making a vole condominium. I had never had trouble with voles before, and I put a little garden on this side of the wall, and I remember the first spring I had planted a couple of rows of tulips. And the first spring I went down into that little garden, and I watched this tulip, it was blooming, being tugged into the wall, just like inch by inch. So happily, meet Sadie, our divine vole catcher. She helps a lot. So knowing I had to have that wall, I pushed it out a bit from the fireplace in the living room, and again added gravel. And then what I've been enjoying is the things that seed in it, like opium poppies. That's what there you see, and Johnny jump ups and so on. And then on the other side of the wall, I made this very little cutting garden. Bosco, my husband, said, "Oh, that's much too small." And indeed, it's only about 20 by 30, but it's enough of a garden to have some lettuces and herbs and tulips and hyacinths, and then later cosmos and zinnias and a few dahlias and so on. And he was saying it was too small because, well, there it is, surrounded by a field. But this is what we had at Duck Hill. We had a cutting garden of about 80 feet by 80 feet, and he grew hundreds, it seems, of tomatoes from seed, and we had lots of vegetables. And then we had a friend make us this Greek Revival chicken house that was the centerpiece of the garden. And when the lettuces bolted, I just threw them over the fence, and the chickens would be just so happy. It was great weeding up there because you just threw it over the fence. On the walk to the chicken house, every spring in March, I know this is hard to believe, but we always have a light snow in March, and I would go and sprinkle seed of Shirley poppies on top of the snow. And then they love that. And then the seed just kind of sinks into the ground. And then in June, I'd have these wonderful poppies, display of poppies as you went to the house. And after they started to fade, I would pull them up, and this is where we grew dahlias. Well, I don't have a place like that now, but I always sprinkle a few Shirley poppies in this little new cutting garden. And curiously, they cut very well. If you cut the blooms and sear them under, from a match or your stove, they'll last in a bouquet for just a few days, which is nice. So we have about 11 or 12 acres of woods, and there's a lot of eastern red cedar in the woods, and a lot of it is sort of fading. And we have this wonderful man called John who works for us he works for me once a week. And so I had him go in the woods and get cedar to make that fence around this garden, and we sunk wire to keep the rabbits out. And then one winter, I drew some tutors and asked him if he thought he could make them, and he said, sure. As Lonnie was saying of her helper, no problem. And so he did. He made 4 of them, and they give the garden just a little bit of weight and gravitas. And one of the wonderful things about moving north is that we can grow sweet peas. I don't know if you can grow sweet peas here, can you? You can? Oh my God. So I grow sweet peas on those tutors in the spring, and then in the summer, things like scarlet runner bean and cobia. And I allow a certain amount of self-seeding in that garden, and this is Verbena bonariensis, which comes, whether you plant it or not, it comes out of nowhere. And on the outside of the fence, I decided to grow a few of the wilder roses. I just have a weakness for roses, and I had a lot of them at Duck Hill, and I wasn't going to have a lot of them again. Although I have to tell you that every year I plant yet another rose. It's just so bad, this garden disease. This is the Father Hugo rose, Rosa hugonis, and it blooms very early in May, and it's fragrant, and it has these tiny leaves that nothing ever bothers. And this is a rose I just love that a friend gave me. It's called Rosa pendulina. And even though the flowers are wonderful, the hips are just amazing, turn scarlet in the fall. And this is the eglantine rose, the rose of Shakespeare. And besides fragrant and sweet flowers, its claim to fame is that the foliage, on a humid day, which of course you never have, or after a rain, which you almost never have, the leaves emanate this scent of apples. It's just the most wonderful fragrance of apples. And it too has hips for the winter. And this is the last rose to mention. It's called the apple rose, Rosa villosa. And its claim to fame really is its hips. And they look kind of like little cherry tomatoes. And here they are in September with the sunflower lemon queen. And the hips usually last right into winter until a couple years ago when this fellow showed up. And he just methodically hopped along the top railing of the fence around the garden and ate every single one of the hips. And I think he must have been the healthiest chipmunk in the northwest corner. So this is the back of the house. We put on a little mud, that's the garage, and we put on a little, we call it the mud room. It's full of plants. And my husband had this wonderful greenhouse at Duck Hill, and when we moved, he said, "I'm not having a greenhouse. We're not doing that." I said, "Okay." And then after a year or two of trying to find enough windowsills for all his begonias and geraniums, he said, "Paige, I really want a greenhouse." So this time we got a kit. It was recommended by the New York Botanical Garden, and it came in pieces. It arrived in pieces, all with numbers. And we had a wonderful man who knew how to do such things, put it together. And I think of it as Bosco's man cave. I know, that's where he's going to be if I can't find him. So up from the cutting garden and the greenhouse was a slight slope. And I didn't get my farmhouse, I didn't get an orchard, but there were a couple of old pear trees there, and I decided that would be a place to plant some apple trees. So I did. I went out and bought about 8 apple trees, and I planted them. And after I planted them, Bosco came out and looked at them, and then looked at me and said, "Paige, do you know how old I am?" And I realized, if you're a gardener for a long time, you're so used to planting things little and then watching them grow. And I forget how old we are. And I really should have gotten much bigger apple trees. So I was actually on a trip in England fairly recently, and I saw trees with these wood braces around them. I think it was to keep the cows away. And we do have deer. We don't have a deer fence, unfortunately, in a way. So I had my beloved John make these braces for the apple trees, and then underneath that top wood are 3 strands of wire, and it does keep the deer away. And it makes at least you can see the apple trees now. It makes them a little more important. So we did have fields in the front and the back of the house, and every year I unmow a little bit more and make these fields bigger. And this one, which is in the back of the house, with no help from me, it was just blessed with all these native wildflowers. So we have black-eyed Susans and fleabane, and this is an anemone called thimbleweed. And a lobelia I had never heard of before, called Lobelia spicata, that weaves itself in the fields. And this is bergamot, which is a monarda, and it not only smells wonderful, but it carpets the fields in July, and there's just this haze of lavender. And then I allow milkweed to crop up because of the monarch butterflies, of course, but also it too, when it blooms, has the most extraordinary fragrance. To me, the most important part of a meadow is the grasses. And we're lucky in that we have a few native grasses in these fields. I'm sure these fields were, I don't know what they were. They were probably lawn at some point. But this is little blue stem, and it loves it dry and poor, which is exactly what most of our land around the house is. And it turns this beautiful russet color in the fall. And this is another native grass that is spreading in our fields. It's called Indian grass, Sugastrum. And what I should tell you that what I'm doing in the fields, I'm just encouraging the good stuff and pulling or mowing down or cutting the bad stuff. And it seems to be working because as I get rid of invasives, the good things, the flowers and the grasses extend, keep every year there's a little more of them, which is very exciting. And I don't mow. We mow in early April. We keep the meadows up in the wintertime because it's seed for the birds. It's a habitat for the good bugs. And also it's so beautiful in the winter to see these waving grasses and seed heads. I've put mowed paths through all the fields, and I don't know about you, but I find a path in a garden beguiling. I love the idea of going on a path somewhere. And if you put a path in a field of grass, it suddenly becomes part of your garden. It's no longer completely wild land. And what we did, what I spent the first 5 or 6 years doing, was putting paths in the woods. So all the paths that go through the fields connect with paths in the woods. So you can, it's 17 acres, and that's a lot, but it's not, but you actually, it feels like more because you can go on this adventure. This is one of the back paths, and it leads to really bizarre, high, rocky woods. We're on marble. We're on sweet soil, which is totally new to me. Do you all have an acid soil, or do you have a sweet soil? Yeah, acid. I had always had an acid soil, but we're by the Housatonic River, and it's called the Marble Valley. And so in the back, we have these high, rocky woods, that go up 3 stories. They're just extraordinary. And I didn't even know this existed when we bought the place. And this is that marble dust that you see. And it's host to all sorts of plants that were new to me, like this carex here, which is, it's called the bristleaf sedge, and it only grows in sweet soil. And this is an adorable fern called the ebony spleenwort, and again, only grows where there's limestone, marble, sweet soil. And we have things like this campanula rotundifolia just growing just coming out of the rocks in the woods. And in May, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of our native columbine, enough so that I can pick some for a bouquet in the house. And lots of oak trees, but it's an oak that grows in sweet soil. It's called the chinkapin oak. Well, this is the front of the house, and if you followed Sadie, our dog, down that path, you get to completely different woods. First you come to a pine grove, and then it descends into dark, damp, rich woods, and it's full of wildflowers. It's full of jack-in-the-pulpits and lots of different ferns, and this is rue anemone, and our native trillium, and the starflower, which is on the cover of my book. And even in the winter, there's all this moss that's so beautiful. And this time of year, our native witch hazel is blooming. It's just so bizarre that it blooms in late October, November, and it just lights up the woods. And there's the flowers. And then on one side of the woods, which was quite wet, it's the royal we, John put in a corduroy walk, which is just pieces of cedar. And on either side is skunk cabbage. And I think of skunk cabbage as our native hosta. It's quite beautiful when it expands. And that leads out to a wetland. It's called a fen. And here it is, the way it looks in October is just masses and masses of asters, a swamp aster. So this is a low piece of meadow that we had that was just choked with invasives, things like buckthorn and Rosa multiflora and the European kind of honeysuckle and bittersweet. And what John does for me in the winter is he cuts down and digs out invasives. And he did in this area, and then suddenly all the natives just were what you saw. And this, what you're seeing here is one of our native shrub dogwoods. And this is what it looks like this time of year. It's just laden with this fruit. So this is what the low woods looked like when we arrived at, we call it Church House. And it was just filled with invasives. And so laboriously every winter, and I do it too, we cut out all this bad brush. And then, oops, wait a minute. Oh, okay. And then now it looks kind of like this, which is what you're seeing is just native shrubs underneath the trees. And so we were cutting all this woody stuff, and it's way down in the woods. And John and I were scratching our heads about what to do about it, and we didn't have a chipper. And so I said, John, let's make brush piles. And so he did. He made these brush piles, and at first I thought they looked like beaver houses, and then I decided they looked like land art. And actually what they are wonderful habitats, probably for the rabbits that are eating my garden, but also for creatures like this. This is a chipping sparrow, and chipping sparrow can dip into these brush piles to get away from the hawks and the owls. So I'm going to read you a couple of small pieces to end the lecture, and one is called A Different Emphasis. This is from the book in a chapter called A Different Emphasis. The gardens we've made in the past 6 years, the echoes of Duck Hill we've introduced, give us much pleasure. Cold frames, greenhouse, orchard, gravel paths and terraces, the flower borders to walk through, perennials and flowering shrubs to grow and cut. All of this enriches our days. But daily I find I am drawn away from the gardens to the wild land. I cannot easily explain why the fields and woods we've inherited call to me in a way that flower gardens do not. Perhaps it is precisely because they're not cultivated. They hold mysteries. They offer discoveries unknown to me. I thrill to the unexpectedness of flowering almost every day in spring, summer, and fall as I walk through the meadows and along the woodland paths. Many that send me to books, and actually now to my iPhone, to find their names. I'm beguiled by the traces and sightings of denizens that share our land, not only birds and butterflies, but bears. Twice now we have this mother bear who's decided to have her cubs on our property. Which is a little scary. Because you don't want to get between a mother bear and her cubs, so we're very careful about where we walk in the woods when she's there. And we have bobcats and coyotes and turkeys, lots of turkeys. Here at Church House, we've stumbled on a landscape rich in ecological value thanks to its diversity of natural habitats. Deep, rich woods feeding into wetland, low, damp meadow rising to fields high and dry, upland, rock-littered forest. And yes, our 17 acres has been fiddled with or monkeyed with over the years, over the centuries, first probably by Indians burning and clearing, and then by settlers, and finally by farmers. But only traces of their inhabitants are apparent now, and the young woods show inspiring signs of regeneration. This is as close as I'll be in my lifetime to stewarding a piece of land in its wild state, and it has definitely changed me as a gardener. So I'm going to end with another piece. This is a picture at Duck Hill, and I'm just going to read a couple paragraphs from a chapter called Sharing a Home. Duck Hill was always mine. When Bosco and I got married in 2000, I had lived there for 19 years. The gardens were established, the boxwoods shoulder high, the flowers in satisfying drifts. The house was my cozy nest. It was my haven, my solace, the place where I loved most to be. It's not easy to move into someone else's home, especially if at least one of you is possessive. One of Bosco's pleasures has always been working in a garden, but it was hard for him at first to find a niche in mine. I thought of the garden at Duck Hill as my work of art, however imperfect. I was forever editing, attempting to create an atmosphere, more interested in painting pictures with plants than acquiring them. Bosco lives to acquire plants, loves nothing more than accumulating and propagating plants, never bothering much about where they're going in the scheme of things. Design is not his thing. It's the doing that he loves. The dust finally settled during those first years of our marriage, and we learned to accommodate and appreciate each other's ways. And during our time together at Duck Hill, we developed new areas of the land. The woodland, we had this little woodland path that went around two sides of the garden, and Bosco came with a dowry of snowdrops and epimediums. So and in the end, we just had all sorts of treasures. It became actually my favorite part of the garden. So we did that together. We did the vegetable garden together, and the pool. I mean, the chicken house, of course, we did together. And Bosco enthusiastically took over the caring of the brood of chickens and turkeys and ducks, bringing every scrap known to man up from the house and then coming back home with the eggs. We built the Boscatel so he would have a room of his own, and he had his own greenhouse, and he actually had a pool. But the garden was always thought of and known as mine. The old farmhouse, too. Bosco never got used to its low ceilings and walls of books everywhere, and although his pictures were hung where there was room and his furniture and bibelots woven in, he never loved the house the way I did. It wasn't hard for him to leave. How fine then to end up in a place we discovered together, neither his nor mine, but ours. I think we love it equally. Daily we pinch ourselves about living here, about how lucky we are. Each window, each door of the house frames a view of the hills and the sky, and we'll call to each other to come look at the fleeting light, at the shadows, at the colors. In summer, when we linger on the terrace into dusk and the sunlight abandons the fields around us, suddenly Canaan Mountain is lit golden orange, and we say, "Oh, oh, look, isn't it wonderful?" So thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions? Yes. How long what? How long ago? We moved up, it's almost 8 years. We've been in the house almost 7 years. So, yeah. Yes. We're equidistant between New York and Boston, actually. The only city nearby is Hartford, which is... Oh, towns. Yes. Yes, we're close to Litchfield, we're close to Salisbury. All the towns around us are Sharon, Salisbury, Cornwall, Norfolk. And Litchfield's just a half an hour away. Yeah, it's called Litchfield County. It's just the most beautiful place. You should all come visit. So, no other questions? Thank you very much. Yes, I'm sorry. It's interesting, there's not much in the way of archives about it. It was built in 1793, and then in 1850 they abandoned it. They said it's too cold, it's too high, it's too hard to walk. But really what happened was Main Street, we suddenly had this Main Street in Falls Village, and the railroad had come in. And so they wanted a church on Main Street. So they abandoned it, and it stayed abandoned, I think, for almost a century, until the early 20s. And then a family bought it and made it into a two-family house. And and then this bachelor owned it. And the sad thing, the wonderful thing is he put a lot of money into things like wiring and plumbing. The sad thing is he didn't really like old houses, so he put in windows that I would never have put in. And, you know, the old floors are gone, and so they're unless you're in the cellar or the top floor, there are not many vestiges of oldness, which breaks my heart. And when we first came, there are all these sort of picture windows. I loathe picture windows sometimes. And, but inside, looking out at those hills, those windows are fabulous. So we've never changed them. So no, I think it was quite famous in the early days, in the 1700s. We had preachers who were freed slaves from the South. It was, I think there was a underground railroad going on in the area. Anyway, it was interesting. Yes. Yes, we opened for the Garden Conservancy Open Days, and we open if you if you emailed me and said, I have a group and we'd like to come visit your garden, I would say yes. So, yeah, it is open. And there's some incredible gardens around us, one being Bunny Williams' garden. So sometimes people come and go to see 3 or 4 gardens around us. Yes? Deer. There's still a problem. Deer are a problem. Bears are getting to be, sadly, bears are getting to be a real problem because people don't take their bird feeders in, and so the bears come up to the houses, and sometimes they come indoors if they smell something good in the kitchen, and they won't hurt you, but they're giant, and so people are now talking about hunting bears, which breaks my heart. But deer are a real problem, and I've struggled with the fact that we're not deer fenced. And every time we plant a new shrub, we've got to fence it in. You know, anything that's new, they love to graze on. But most of the stuff that I have in that front garden, they don't seem to like, and they don't actually come right up to the house. Anyway, and if I were going to fence out the deer, I would also be fencing out the bobcats and the turkeys and the coyotes and there's so much wildlife up there that I hesitate to fiddle with fences. So we haven't done that. So there's lots more in the book if you have questions.